Good morning, everyone. I am your moderator, Nikisha Henry, and I would like to welcome all of you to the California African American Water Education Foundation, also known as CALWEF's, their first broadcast of 2021, sponsored by California Water Association. We would also like to give a special thank you to their sponsor for supporting this very important platform for our community. So before we dive in, just a few housekeeping items. If you are viewing right now on YouTube and you have any questions, please feel free to email them at info@calwef.org. And if you're viewing on Facebook Live right now, please be sure to type them into the comments. So without further ado, CalWEF is honored to have some very special leaders here to outline their priorities for 2021. Our guests will share their perspective on the current state policy landscape during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as their thoughts on water quality, water affordability, and the impact of climate change on our water supply. Finally, we will discuss some of the challenges and opportunities in educating our communities around water policy. So with that being said, I would like to give our guests the opportunity to introduce themselves to all of you, our viewers. So first, I would like to start with Senator Stephen C. Bradford of the California Legislative Black Caucus, the chair. If you can just take a couple of minutes to just introduce yourself, let everyone know the very important shoes that you fill.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. You're far too kind, and it's an honor to be here. And I thank all the participants who's joined us today to have this important discussion around water. It's often stated, water, water everywhere, water, water, not a drop to spare. So it's critically important that we make sure that water, which is essential to life, is accessible and affordable to all communities. It's an issue of concern to the Legislative Black Caucus. It's an issue of concern to me. The first office that I ever ran for some 30 years ago was a water board seat. And it was through the tutelage and advice of Merv Dimely and his son, Mark Dimely, that brought these issues, water issues, to the forefront of my attention, and stated the importance of what it plays in all of our lives on a daily basis. So the caucus will be looking at, again, accessibility, the quality of water, the affordability, especially in this pandemic when a lot of folks are hurting financially, to make sure that, as we've asked other utilities to waive shutoffs and things of that nature, that the water industry does the same thing and not shut off water during this difficult time for so many individuals. So I'm excited to be here today, and again, work with the California African American Water Education Fund, and work together in how we advance the discussion around water, but more importantly, to make sure that all Californians have access to quality water.
Absolutely. Well, we're definitely excited to have you, Senator Bradford, and can't wait to hear from you a little later on in the broadcast. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Next up, we have Leanne Randolph, the California Air Resources Board Chair. Welcome, Leanne.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you can just take a couple of moments just to introduce yourselves to our viewers.
Hi, I'm Leanne Randolph. I'm the chair of the California Air Resources Board. The board is a 16-member board, and I am the chair. And our primary responsibilities are around regulating air quality and also addressing the impacts of climate change, which is where we intersect with water issues. Part of our role is running the cap and trade program, which holds auctions and generates funding to use for greenhouse gas emission reductions. And part of that funding is used to fund the Safe Drinking Water Fund. About 5% of that Safe Drinking Water Fund comes from those auction revenues. So we recognize the importance of ensuring good water quality. In addition, just before I started my role as chair of CARB, I was a member of the California Public Utilities Commission, which regulates privately owned water companies. So, privately owned companies provide about 20% of the water to residents in California. So I've been acutely aware of the importance of issues around water quality, and as Senator Bradford mentioned, the importance of affordability of water and affordability of utility services, and ensuring that utilities are supporting their customers through these difficult economic times.
Yeah, difficult times indeed. Well, thank you so much. We are excited also to have you, Leanne, and look forward to hearing from you a little later as well. And last but certainly not least on our panel this morning is Mr. Dale Hunter, CalWEF's Executive Director. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you very, very much. I'm pitch hitting for the Inland Empire Board President, Jasmine Hall. She was on a flight to Houston, and as you know, they've got major issues in Texas, both with power being out and severely cold weather, so we wish her safe travel. I did wanted to tell you a little bit about Jasmine Hall. She is the new president, new chairman of our organization, the California African American Water Education Foundation. Ms. Hall is an elected official. She was first elected to the Inland Empire Utilities Agency Board of Directors in 2014. She was reelected in 2018. She represents Division 4, which includes the cities of Rialto, the cities of Fontana, in and around western San Bernardino County. She is the first African-American president of the Inland Empire Utilities Agency. The agency's been around 60 plus years, and so we are extremely thrilled at Jasmine Hall and her election as president, as well as 2 months ago, she was elected to serve as the chair of our organization. As most of you know, Ms. Hall raised the Honorable Gwen Moore, who passed away unexpectedly last summer. And Ms. Moore, as well as Jasmine Hall, are founders of this great organization. And so you will be a lot more from Jasmine Hall as the year unfolds. As you know, the Inland Empire, or IE, as some of the folks like to call it, it is the fastest growing region in the state of California. And we're very, very fortunate to have as our leader someone that understands how to engage our community in San Bernardino, Riverside area. And I know she wanted to be here, and I certainly can't replace her, but I did want folks to know a little bit about her. She's featured on our Facebook page. Did you know we started a new series, and the first person that we're featuring for this year-long campaign is Jasmine Hall, the new president of the Inland Empire Utilities Agency. They are a fairly large agency. They serve or provide imported water and wastewater services to about 875,000 people. So they're one of the big boys in the water community. And we're thrilled that Jasmine is now leading that organization as president. And then more importantly, for our purposes, she's our leader as we move into the year 2021 for the California African American Water Education Foundation.
Amazing, and congratulations on that wonderful nomination with Jasmine Hall. And I would just like to say, you know, on behalf of CalWEF and all of our panelists, we definitely lift, you know, Texas up in prayer. What is going on right now is, you know, I have friends and family there, and just to see up close and personal through pictures and social media, the things that they are dealing with, it is a lot going on right now. So we definitely, you know, not only lift up Jasmine and her safe travels, but just all of the residents of Texas. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. So with that being said, I would like to just kind of open this up to all of our guests right now on our panel. The Public Policy Institute of California, also known as the PPIC, they recently released the 2021 State Water and Policy Outlook, and they cite safe water and affordability as the major policy issue for the year. So for the African American community, the report amplifies two ongoing concerns, and that's water quality and water rates. We know the moratorium on water bills is set to expire soon, right? So why should we care about this, and what will be the impact to the African American community once that does expire? Who would like to chime in on that first? Senator Bradford, I see you got so much to say on that. Would you like to?
I'll jump in at one time. I think it's critically important that we monitor this moratorium as stated in my opening remarks, and working with the governor's office and making sure that it's extended. The last thing we need is for residents who are fighting to keep a roof over their head now to fight to keep water on as well. So again, it's the lifeblood of our existence is water, and quality water as well. We all know that in minority communities, if there's going to be a level of unsafe drinking water, you're going to find it more predominantly low-income minority communities than you will find in the more affluent communities. I mean, Flint, Michigan is a prime example of knowingly allowing contaminants to be piped to homes throughout that city, and we all know the effects of that. So looking at this report and understanding it gives us a roadmap on the things that we need to look at as legislators, but also to make the community aware. There are a variety of water purveyors and providers throughout the state of California, and they all should be mindful of this critical time and working with these communities to make sure, again, that water is affordable to these folks. This is the worst time right now to try to raise rates. And again, absolutely the worst time to try to suspend or cut off water services to the public at this time. So we will be, again, working with the governor's office to see, make sure that this moratorium is extended. And in my district, just you talk about water quality, I had Sativa just 2 years ago. That had to be taken over by the county and various agencies because of the poor water quality that was being pumped into unincorporated LA and Compton and parts of Compton. So this is an issue that's not new, and it's one that, again, we have to continue to work to address.
Absolutely. Leanne, any concerns that you have in addition to what Senator Bradford shared already?
I completely agree with everything Senator Bradford said, but I also want to add another kind of overlay, which is that what Texas shows us is the importance of maintaining and updating infrastructure. And, you know, that's also what Flint, Michigan showed us, is that upgrading and maintaining infrastructure is critical. And one of the challenges we're going to face is, as so many customers have been unable to pay their bills, the revenue that's needed to ensure water quality and ensure an effective operating system is going to be impacted. And I think that's where the new administration in Washington can really be helpful as they think about bringing relief to state and local governments and making sure that they're supporting the efforts to keep up the infrastructure even as revenues are lower, because we have to do both. We have to protect affordability and we have to protect infrastructure.
Like this, where more families are home, more people are home, more water usage is but with that comes higher costs. So Dale, anything to add to that?
The only thing I would like to add is the reality rates. About 2 weeks ago, San Diego Union Tribune did a piece on water rates, and some folks in San Diego County are looking at $1,000 to $1,500 water bills. I know for many that's a shock. That's a pretty big monthly note for your water bill. Most of you know, San Diego County, they do have the most expensive water in California, the most expensive probably in the country. But pretty soon here, folks are going to be asked to pony up $1,000, $1,500 for their water bill. And Senator Bradford talked about the moratorium. One of the things that I would like to see is, some kind of fund to help people out, some kind of soft landing. We had some kind of relief for renters, but water is one of those basic things. It's not, you got to have it, it's a must. And so the rate issue over the next couple of months, many folks around California, African Americans, are going to start to see this discussion louder. And I think, as our guests eloquently pointed out, there's a lot going on in not just our community, but in California. And some of these challenges we got to deal with. And I'm so pleased that our guest is here, because our theme is Leadership Matters. What that means is leadership is about solving problems. And we got some challenges coming ahead. We've got two excellent folks in front of us that understand that. But there's a rate issue heading our way. And I want to just raise the red flag that it's not here yet, but I know policy members will be hearing about it from their constituents once they get home. Because we're talking about not 1%, 2%, we're talking about pretty significant rate increases over the next year or so. So we just wanted to put that out there as an organization. We have two primary things we focus on. Water quality, because that's a public health issue. Folks in our community understand that. Senator Bradford talked about Flint, talked about Sativa. What other quiet little quality issues are going on that we don't know about? And then the other one is rates. And for our community, that's a pocketbook issue. And the dichotomy of, do I pay rent or pay water bills, that is unacceptable. Water is too basic to be in a position of, do I pay my water bill or do I pay some other bill? So water rates is going to be an important issue as we move forward in 2021.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts on that. So my next question is for you, Senator Bradford. First, let me congratulate you on your recent election as California Legislative Black Caucus Chair. Congratulations on that. So can you tell us what the CLBC's priorities will be under your leadership specifically?
Well, first and foremost, to continue the fine tradition that has been started and by the caucus over the last 50 plus years, and continue to advocate for not only African Americans, but all people. Every ethnic caucus that exists today in California legislature or in Congress is because of the leadership of the Legislative Black Caucus. We were the first ethnic caucus here in California. We were the first ethnic caucus in Washington, D.C. So I want to make sure that we stay true to the goals, objectives, and principles of the foundation of this caucus. It's to, as we say, protect our members and make sure we protect the members that we have elected and grow our caucus. But then three, always the policy, making sure that we're dealing with policy that has direct impacts on African Americans, because if it has direct impacts on African Americans, it usually has direct impacts on all Californians.
Absolutely.
So dealing with the social equity issues, the economic disparities that clearly exist. What we're experiencing right now in this pandemic is not new to the Black community. It's not new to the brown community. It's just been exposed more. The fissures have been far more visible because of the pandemic. So addressing the systemic problems that have long existed, the inadequacies of education, we're seeing it more again of students falling behind because of this digital divide and at-home learning. That existed again prior to the pandemic, where you had slow internet speed or no internet at all or no computers in homes, and this has been exposed. So making sure we address those issues. Healthcare. It's been clear that Black and brown people are being infected at a higher rate and dying at a higher rate. So making sure that resources, healthcare resources are available to our communities. And this is something that the caucus is going to be out front leading the charge. But last but not least is public safety and, criminal justice reform. We don't need to see another George Floyd. And again, for many African Americans, we knew these type of atrocities and treatment by law enforcement existed well before we saw Mr. Floyd being killed almost live on TV. Richard Pryor used to have a saying, "You're going to believe me or your lying eyes." Well, now with cameras all over, we know we're not lying anymore. We know what we've seen. We know what we experienced. So criminal justice reform is going to be one of the top issues that we address as the Legislative Black Caucus. And I'm excited to work with my 7 other colleagues and champion, like I say, those 3 priority issues of, like I say, social equity, both in economics, public safety, and making sure we have quality health care in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And all very, very important issues, Senator Bradford. You definitely have your work cut out for you, but we know you are the man for the job. So I want to kind of go back to the Public Policy Institute of California, their report. So the 2 concerns, obviously, you know, that are amplified, we already discussed previously, but what, how do I want to say this? What are some, what will CLBC, what is your policy agenda around the water quality and the actual rates around that?
Well, I can't say we have policy per se dealing with water, but I guarantee you we're going to monitor this issue. Again, I have sativa in my district that both Assemblyman Gibson and I addressed 2 years ago, and making sure that the infrastructure was improved, that it had better management. The company that was managing it before did a poor job. So looking where those similar situations exist throughout our districts, our respected districts, but more so across the state of California, because primarily where there is poor water quality, it's, you best believe, minority people live there. And again, just protecting folks, as stated, and making sure that their water is not cut off during these critical times, that this moratorium is extended, and stressing that to the governor, who I think is very sensitive to that. We're doing it in other utility areas of utility. So water, like you say, is critical. It's more important than our keeping our lights on. It's more important than keeping the gas flowing. Like I say, we can't live without water. So again, making sure it's affordable. And but again, I can't speak to any specific policy piece of legislation, I should say, that's addressing water at this point, at this moment.
Okay. And so lastly, speaking of the moratorium, you know, once it is lifted, and if it, let's just say it is not extended, and a lot of families could very well be facing $500, $1,000 water bills on up. What is that going to look like? What other protections can, you know, the CLBC look into or be involved with? What other things can be maybe put in place just in case the moratorium is not lifted at all?
I think we need to look at doing similar legislation that we did last year for tenant landlord situations. A piece of legislation that we just extended last week until June of this year, making sure that just as we make sure folks are not being evicted during this critical time, and making sure that landlords are not losing their properties because their tenants can't make rent, we need to have the same scope and diligence in making sure, again, water is not being cut off during this critical time. Making funds available. We have reached out and we made money available to protect tenants and landlords. And I think the same effort has to be made to make sure water it's going to be provided to these California residents. And I'm pretty sure not only the Legislative Black Caucus, but our Latino caucus as well will be at the table, making sure that we have similar safety nets and safeguards in that area.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously the moratorium is much needed. Hopefully that does get extended, and thank you for your advocacy in that. Thank you so much, Senator Bradford. So next, I would like to bring on Dale, Mr. Hunter, to the screen. So Dale, obviously we are super excited, you know, to hear all about Jasmine Hall. As you mentioned before, she was spotlighted on the CalWEF's Facebook page. as the first African-American president for the IEUA, one of the largest drinking water and wastewater agencies in the state. So can you talk a little bit about what we can expect from CalWEF under her leadership?
Yeah, I think the thing that we will be focused on is three things. First, we are a fairly new group. We were formed in early 2019. It was the vision and the commitment of folks like Jasmine Hall, Gwen Moore, Gloria Gray, Rick Callender, Carolyn Veal Hunter, Harold Williams, Emma Maxey, Steve Welsh, Robert Luke. Those are the folks that stepped up and provided both the encouragement, support, and the resources for our organization. As I said earlier, we have two twin towers we primarily focus on, water rates and water quality, and both of those issues are coming into sharper focus as the year unfolds. We're going to do a couple of things. Obviously, virtual outreach is the reality of today. This broadcast program we kicked off last year as a way to talk to folks, to get out and talk about not only what we're doing, but some of the opportunities that are available. We also wanted to look at other social media platforms to talk to people. We'll be looking at a podcast. Those are very popular. The reason I like podcasts is because they have shelf life. You can, do one on Thursday and you can kick it around to folks and they can listen or watch on their at their leisure. The other area we'll be working on this year is we'll be talking with faith leaders. This is a big part of our organization, is to talk to what we call non-traditional water stakeholders. And in the African American community, not only our faith leaders, as most of you know, our pastors and bishops, they carry and reflect a pretty strong standing in our community. And we wanted to make sure that their congregations are up to speed on water. So we'll be working with both the folks on this panel and others to put that together. Right now, we're looking at Faith Leaders Forum in the Bay Area, and certainly we'll do one in Southern California. The other thing I think folks could look for is later this year, we'll have our Leadership Summit. And I just wanted to comment, we're focused on leadership. Now that you got the baton, what are you going to do with it? So we're not crying over spilled milk from before. We're looking forward. And as we look forward, leadership is critical. And so we'll be asking our state leaders, our community leaders, to partner with us as we try to explain, and in simple terms, how things work in relations to the water. For example, if you live in an apartment, you may never see a water bill because the bill is included in your rent. And so your rent may be going up and there may be a provision that's related to water that you may never know. So one of the things is to engage with the California apartment owners and other groups to make sure that they're getting message to the folks that rent from them that may not get a water bill or may not follow it on a regular basis. And so those are some of the outreach efforts that we're going to do. And as you know, in our community, it's not just the LA Chamber you got to talk to. You got to talk to the Jack and Jills, the sororities, the fraternities, the urban leagues, the NAACPs, the 100 Black Women. We have a plethora of very strong organizations that are the backbone of our community. And we want to start talking to them about a dry subject called water.
I like that, a dry subject called water. I see what you did there. I see what you did there, Dale. So I think you mentioned some excellent ways that your organization is actually engaging the community about the challenges. Because like you mentioned before, apartment residents, they may not realize why the rent is going up. It's because of the water. So I think those are excellent ways in which you guys are tapping into different organizations and churches and being able to engage and inform the community about that. So if we have viewers right now who are watching, or folks who may have visited your website or wanting more information, maybe they're saying to themselves, what, I think I'm interested in getting involved in the water industry some kind of way, shape, or form. How can opportunities for African Americans be increased within the water industry itself?
That's a two-parter. I'll take the first part and just on education. So if you don't know, look at your water bill. If you own a home or a condo, you get a water bill. Mm-hmm. Have you ever read your water bill and looked at it? So we start with basic 101 stuff. I'm a basketball coach, and I coach youngsters in the 7th and 8th grade, and they always want to shoot 3-pointers like Steph Curry. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, you got to learn how to do layups first. You got to learn how to do a bounce pass. You got to learn how to box out. So I use that for our organization. We're doing basic bread and butter. We're not talking about the dynamics of fish. And while that's important, we want to know, have you ever read your water bill and looked at it? That's number one, which is to get yourself up to speed. Secondly, do you know who your water provider is? If you live within the city of LA, it's Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. If you're in Senator Bradford's district, you got a host of water players that you may get your bill from. And so you've got to know, look at your address and find out who your water provider. Your neighbor across the street may be in somebody else's water district. And then first, about access. We did one of our shows last year about opportunities. And there's what we call entree opportunities to get into the industry. And then there are leadership opportunities to make sure folks are getting ready for the next level of their career. You can't be the CEO if you don't work at it. And so the leadership within the water community is an area that we think is ripe for some extra attention. And so those are the kinds of things that we'll be looking at to open up the water industry. Most folks may not know this, but you can get a very good paying job within the water industry, the waste industry. It's not something that most young people think about, but one of the things we want to do is at least have them take a look. There are a lot of new and evolving careers. Some of the more traditional stuff might not be available, but take a peek at some of the water opportunities, and we'll try to put those front and center so folks will be aware of them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, because I think, like you said, getting more African Americans involved in this industry and actually understanding and knowing how to read their bill and what that means, it's so important. So thank you so much, Dale, for sharing that. Next, I would like to bring on last but certainly not least, our panelist, Leanne. Thank you so much again for being with us this morning. So clearly, we're using this platform to educate our community on the water industry, the challenges and opportunities that lie within. So what is the California Air Resources Board exactly, and what is your board responsible for?
All right. So the mission of the Air Resources Board is to promote and protect public health by reducing air pollution while recognizing and considering the effects of regulatory actions on the overall economy in the state. And we are also the lead agency for California's climate change policy. So as chair, I lead the board and the agency as a whole. We have about 1,300 employees throughout the state doing this work. Our priorities right now are first of all, really engaging all of our affected communities that are burdened by pollution and climate change. The air quality sort of regulatory structure in California is divided between the state board, which I run, but also local air districts like the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And so the state board regulates all mobile sources of emissions. So basically, if it's an engine and it emits, it has to go through our agency and be certified. So we're the reason you have a catalytic converter on your car, and all those types of regulations. And so one of our primary responsibilities is to understand the pollution burden that our communities experience, particularly environmental justice communities that may experience a lot of diesel emissions from trucking or other types of toxic air emissions. And so working closely with those communities is an important part of our work, and is going to be a key focus of my term as chair of the board. We have a community air protection program that the legislature adopted that requires us to identify communities, work directly with residents in those communities to come up with solutions for air quality and toxic issues in the community, and through our Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, which helps us advise on our climate policy. So one of our major steps is periodically every 5 years, the board adopts the Climate Change Scoping Plan, which lays out the plan to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. And over the next 18 months, we will be doing that 5-year update of that plan and identifying ways that we can achieve greenhouse gas emission reductions in our electricity sector, our transportation sector, the industrial sector, the agricultural sector, in our natural lands like forests. So that's going to be a big policy focus going forward. Mm-hmm. In terms of water, one of the things we haven't talked about yet is water supply. And that's an important component of our work around climate change, because mitigating climate change will mitigate the impacts of climate change like drought, which significantly exacerbates water supply, the increase in temperatures, reducing our snowpack that provides water to the state. And then that in turn raises affordability issues as water accessibility becomes a challenge. Mm. And then the last thing I want to mention is that a lot of our energy sector is used to move water. About 12% of total energy usage in California is related to the movement of water. So if we can decarbonize and ensure that the electricity sector reduces emissions, then that in turn will benefit the climate change issues as a whole, and ideally help reduce the cost of moving all that water around the state.
Absolutely, and reducing the cost, as we've mentioned before, is so important, more so now, than ever. So as the first African American chair of the Air Resources Board and the only African American to sit on the board, how exactly are you embracing diversity, and are you finding any challenges with that?
So we have another African American who is added to the board, Davina Hurt from, awesome. Okay. She is a city council member in Belmont and sits on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and nice. She's fabulous, and I'm looking forward to working with her. So I think we address equity in a lot of different ways. First, CARB recently established a new deputy executive officer position, which of environmental justice, and she reports directly to the executive officer who reports to the board and myself. And that's an elevation of a position in a key way, because she will be working with the all of our environmental equity programs in the agency. She'll have more staff reporting to her. She will be part of the decision-making process within the agency in a key way. So we're really pleased to have restructured that position and elevated it and made it more of the senior management of the agency. So that's important. We're doing work internally to diversify our staff. We have lagged behind, frankly, in terms of recruiting and, more importantly, promoting and elevating African Americans within the agency. And so that'll be a key effort going forward. And as I mentioned, we have various ways that we can work with communities through the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee on issues of climate change, through our community groups working on the local community air pollution reduction work. And so that is going to be a key focus going forward for the agency.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all that you do, and, congratulations for being on the board. And like you mentioned before, the other representative who was, I'm sorry, I forgot her name.
Davina Hurt.
Adina, is it Adina?
Davina
Hurts. Yeah. So congratulations to both of you. Just being on the upper level management, senior positions, and advocating and doing what we need to do to make change, especially within our communities. Thank you so much for that. So at this point, I would like to open it up for Q&A. So if I can get all of our panelists back on. And to our audience, again, if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. Just feel free to go ahead and put them right on in the chat. But we do have a few questions that came in earlier. And so whoever would like to chime in, just feel free to just come right on in. Okay. So first question is, how does environmental justice tie into today's conversation overall?
If I can jump in, I think it's critical. As stated earlier, many times, many of the policies that we advocate for, it's always centered around minority communities. They're usually the poster child, but they very rarely benefit directly from any of these programs, sadly. They're always used as the reason why we need to do this, but then the jobs never come to our communities. The resources never come to our communities in none of the projects. So I'm mindful of that and making sure that if you're going to continue to use Black and brown people as a poster child and why environmental justice is so important, we need to make sure that they benefit, but also some of these environmental organizations need to have people of color on these boards. And many times that is not the case. It's the folks who live in the West Side who own a Tesla, who's trying to tell folks down in South LA how they should live their lives. So this is a critical issue of importance to me and the Black Caucus, and making sure true equity is being practiced in our environmental policies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said. Don't just make Black and brown people the poster child. Make sure they're actually benefiting. That is so, so important. Anyone else like to chime in on that?
Yes, I would add a couple things. I mean, first, I think as policymakers, it's our responsibility to listen directly, to hear directly from the communities, and make sure we understand what they need, not what we think they need or assume that they need. And then the second thing is, as you know, we really are going through a fundamental transition in terms of dealing with climate change. And that transition has to include good, strong paying jobs in these new industries that are, have benefits and have provide the life that we want for our communities, and so we need to be mindful of that, and make sure that we're thinking about that transition and not just saying, okay, we're going to eliminate this piece, but we're not going to to think about how that affects the workers, and how we can build industries that have good paying jobs.
Absolutely. Dale, anything to add on to that?
I would only add, and it's been said, but it's worth putting a marker down on this one. Thanks to, excuse me, some environmental issues. There's a big water bond that's on the ballot, and 2 weeks before the elections, the proponents want to talk to us at the dais with the pastor. That's unacceptable. Can't show up 2 weeks before an election on these multi-billion-dollar deals and ask for our community to support. And I think Senator Bradford is putting the marker down. We got to ask the question, what's in it for us? You look at these big measures over time, going back 20 years, and try to do the forensic accounting on how much was distributed in the 35th Senate District or other the California Legislative Black Caucus, and I think you might be embarrassed to find that number isn't very big. So this is a new chapter in our state, in our community, certainly in the nation, that we've got to ask the tough questions. Don't show up at First AME Church the week before election asking for our support. And First AME, and Senator Bradford know, it's a big prominent church in Los Angeles that has a lot of movers and shakers in our community that go there. And I use that as an example because that happens. A week before an election, somebody wants to stand up in front of St. Paul's and say, support this issue, without giving us the real background of not only what does it mean, but again, Senator Bradford's putting it out there. What's in it for us? And it's okay to ask that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what would you guys say, besides platforms like this, it is important for those conversations to take place way in advance, prior to 1 month, of like that. So how can educate the community and have these conversations about, things like this and environmental justice issues? How can we do that? And in making sure that we're holding them accountable, the decision makers, how can we do that?
Well, I'll just throw out, I've worked with several programs over my course of time in state government that structure advisory committees. And it's always a struggle to find Black representation. And so I really want to encourage people to, raise your hand and sign up and participate, because the feedback and the interaction is valuable. I mean, we are about to, within the next month, start our solicitation process for the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee for the climate change scoping plan. And we have not had enough Black representation on that committee over the years. And I really want this newest committee to have a lot of representation. So I think that's an important opportunity. And I will follow up with you so I can get the information on the link for the solicitation process, so that you can share it with far and wide to see who might be interested.
Absolutely. So advisory committees, that's definitely important. Senator Bradford?
I would totally agree with the advisory committees, but it's not enough to have them. You got to listen to those people of color, and they have to feel welcomed. I know plenty who have tried to add their voice and they were shunned. I mean, it was just a recent report, and I'm not trying to throw stones, with CARB ignored many of their Black employees. And when they had advice on how to improve situations in those communities, they were quickly discounted. So I'm excited about Chairwoman Randolph's ascension to this position, because I think it's going to be a level of sensitivity and awareness that didn't exist prior to this. And it's far too often, and again, in these environmental communities, it is people who don't live in these communities who are trying to tell us or I should say environmental agencies that don't live in our communities on what's best for us. And I say there are people out there who want to be a part of this. Many times I hear we can't find them. We graduate hundreds, if not thousands, of Black engineers and scientists every year from HBCUs. Go out and recruit them from those universities. They're not hard to find. And I challenge corporations all the time, agencies who say we can't find these people. Where are you looking at? Because the talent is out there. But again, it's not enough to hire them and then exclude them from decision making and make them feel unwanted. And that's part of the challenge too. Value their presence while there.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think we do need to broaden our efforts around recruiting employees, and as I mentioned before, promoting and supporting them throughout their careers in terms of advancement. So I think that's a good point.
Absolutely. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, just one thing, and I think the panelists talked about advisory committees as a first step, and I want to give a shout out to Assemblyman Mike Gibson, who's in the 64th Assembly District. Certainly he's encased in Senator Bradford's district, but the Assemblyman started the 64th Assembly District Water Advisory Committee. It was basically community leaders, not professional water advocates, but community leaders from homeowner groups. And he pulled them together just to have a forum so they could talk about what's going on in water, not after the fact, but before the fact. And so that's one simple thing that I think could be done. Certainly, Senator Bradford is aware of it, but with respect to legislative bodies or councils, we've got to have an advisory council, people that you count on to give you the real story about what does it mean when you don't have water. So I would certainly advocate for advisory councils as one step. There are a lot of different models, but the most importantly, you have to have the people that are from the community and not outsiders. And that 64th Assembly District Water Advisory Council that Assemblyman Gibson put together, that's a great model. It's a first step, I like to call it. It's the layup. And that's important for people to understand. Water is come in at a very easy to understand bite size, will not start with, which most of my colleagues do, these very complicated big picture stuff that you leave glazed over. And so the advisory council is the way to keep it local, to keep it real, and for legislators and policy folks to get feedback.
Could I add one other thing as it relates to water specifically? Blacks need to run for these water board seats. Again, that was the first office I ran for in 1988. I wasn't successful, but I learned so much that the formation of these water boards 100 years ago, if not a little longer, were centered around white farmers, white industrial corporations, and their need and control of the water agency. And most of these guys were the ranchers, the large industry folks, and that's who controlled water for 150 years here in the state of California. And it's important that we diversify these boards. Many residents don't even know there's an elected water board in their area and what that board does. So I would say also, let's run more people of color for these seats.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes the motivating factors are different, but I think, with the moratorium, set to expire, and, a lot of people within the African-American community seeing their water bills go up, I think that right there would be a lot of motivation too, just to become, like you said, Senator Bradford and Leanne, and also Udell, we have to have representation on these boards. So we have one of our viewers, Edwin Lombard. He said, "Great job." Great job to all of you panelists. You all have shared invaluable information. And so, before we end the broadcast, I kind of like to do a round robin and just any last thoughts. I know we discussed a lot today. It's a lot of work to be had, a lot of advocacy going on behind closed doors, but any last words that each of you would like to share? Leanne, I'll start with you.
I guess I would say that there's a lot of work to do, and we as policymakers need to make sure that we are inclusive and working with our communities in doing this work. And so I appreciate forums like this, so we have the opportunity to share our thoughts. And I could not agree more with Senator Bradford about running for office. As we saw with the success of kind of the Run for Something movement in our last election, you know, there's a lot of offices out there that could use smart, dedicated people that just don't get a lot of attention. And so I encourage folks to be involved.
Be involved. Thank you so much, Leanne. Senator Bradford, any last thoughts?
I would echo just be involved. And again, thank you for a format such as this that allows us to have honest and candid discussions around not only water, but again, the nexus is social equity and environmental justice and equality, which is the common thread on all that we do. I also want to give a shout out to Edwin Lombard and the great work that he's doing with the California Black Chamber of Commerce. And it's through organizations like that that put Black businesses in connection with some of these water agencies. And one of the things we talked about earlier is expanding contract opportunities, because it's a lot of work in these fields. But again, Black and brown companies very rarely are contracted to do some of this work. So making sure that our water agencies contract with these diverse businesses that are in those communities. So I want to thank the Chamber for what they do and will continue to do, but also helping to get the word out as far as employment opportunities. And I would challenge again our environmental agencies, be it water and whoever, to contract with the minority businesses in their community and give them opportunity and continue to have discussions such as this. But it's not enough to just show up and speak up. Sometimes you got to show out. So we got to let our voices be heard on all fronts. So thank you.
Yes, Senator Bradford, and I'm all for the showing out. Thank you so much for that. And last but certainly not least, Dale, any last thoughts?
I will close with the word I always close with, which is engage. It's time to get off the couch, get off the sidelines. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of opportunities, water boards, business. I would close with engage.
All right, so there we have it. We have get involved, show out, and engage. So all of our panelists, thank you so much to Leanne, Senator Bradford, and Dale. Like I said, the invaluable information that you shared today was so important. And also to all of our viewers who are watching, the information was on the screen. If you guys listen, we need to get involved. There is no if, it's when. And so the time is now. And if you're noticing, again, the moratorium is set to expire. And if you're noticing huge drastic changes in your water bill, now is the time to let your voice be heard. Get involved. And like Senator Bradford said, don't just show up, but sometimes we have to show out. So great advice and information on the outlook for 2021 from the water industry. Once again, thank you to all of our panelists and to all of our viewers. Thank you all so much for tuning in this morning. We look forward. Stay tuned for the next CalWEF broadcast. Until then, you guys, take care, be safe out there, and God bless all of you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Ms. Henry, for your job too. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.